Let's bring in MS Now political analyst, former Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill. Media Matters President Angela Corazon is back. Also here, MS Now senior White House reporter Vaughn Hilliard and MS Now's Michael Schnell in South Carolina for the last day of campaigning in the primary to succeed the late Senator Lindsey Graham, with GOP Senate margins quite thin. All right, Vaughn, these may be the final months for Trump to push through Republican legislative priorities, mount some sort of midterm reset, talk about the economy. Why is he using that time and his political capital on this?
Because it's what he wants to do, Alicia. And we know that the president, when he starts to see the potential of his power being restricted, he turns to claims of election fraud. And we know that the cornerstone of his election fraud claims is the idea that there's mass number of individuals who are illegally voting, which sets him up to make the case that the Save America Act, the voter ID provisions, should pass into law. But the reality is that this weekend, the senators, they, including people like Darlene Graham, went to join Michael over in South Carolina. They're on recess. They're gone for the month here. And this weekend, they tried to pass a standalone voter ID provision, not the total Save America Act bill, but just that provision. And of course, they couldn't get 60 votes because Democrats have been loud and clear that they are not going to circumvent the filibuster to allow that to pass. And so it's come and gone, as John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, told the president and the White House repeatedly. But as we have seen for months and years now, the president of the United States was hoping to live in a different reality where there would either blow up the filibuster or there would be Democrats that would join along. But for now, he has it as a political weapon. But even then, it's questionable just how much Republicans are eager to deploy it.
Senator McCaskill, it is notable to me that they voted to confirm Todd Blanche, but they are holding the line on the SAVE Act. Is that simply because they know it's politically toxic?
Well, honestly, I think some of them believe it's against their own self-interest in terms of getting elected. I mean, the irony of this is that mail-in ballots over the years have favored Republicans more than Democrats. And those senators know it. You know, and the thing about this lie that kills me, I know we repeat this a lot, but just bear with me.
Please.
The only time Trump loses is when he's in charge. He has won the 2 times that Democrats have been in charge of the Oval Office. And by the way, Republicans have won in those elections on the same ballots that he lost on. So the fraud is such a joke, and the Republicans in the Senate know it. Now, many of those Republicans also know Blanche is a horrible guy to be Attorney General, but they really know the lie about the election fraud could undermine our entire system of election security, which is based in states and local communities.
I'm intrigued by the fact that they broke out voter ID as its own vote. I assume they thought, Michael, it was politically beneficial to them to get Democrats on the record not supporting that, given the fact that that is, according to polling, the most popular part of the SAVE Act. The outlook for the SAVE Act, any different after they returned from recess?
No, Alicia, there's virtually 0% chance that the situation changes. And it's because of those 2 factors that Vaughn just laid out. First off, Democrats are never going to get behind the Save America Act. There would have to be at least 7 of them to vote for it to break the legislative filibuster. That is just simply not happening. And then the second factor that's not going to change is that not enough Republicans are in favor of nuking that 60-vote filibuster, which means that when senators return from this long August recess, they are going to be in the same exact scenario that they are right now. But I could tell you the tension between the White House and the Senate GOP conference right now is rising because President Trump has been relentlessly pressing these Republican senators to pass the Save America Act, despite the fact that time and time again, it doesn't have the votes. Just recently, President Trump said it does have the votes. They just need to look at the math. John Thune then told reporters later that day, well, I don't know what math he's talking about because the votes just aren't there. The biggest question when lawmakers return to Congress in September is going to be the political one. How do Republicans go about this? I've been speaking to a number of them over recent weeks who say they want to move and shift the narrative from what it is right now in the Save America Act. Instead of having this be Republican versus Republican infighting, they want to focus on Democrats or they want to focus on affordability issues that matter to voters. So practically, this is not happening. But politically, it's going to be a big question of in the lead up to November, how do Republicans and more importantly, how does President Trump handle this very politically toxic matter?
Well, especially, Angela, because the president has shown no interest in turning the corner on this before Senate recess. Take a listen to what the president told Punchbowl about his struggling SAVE Act and Leader Thun's role.
I think it's very important. Save America Act is a very important thing. John's trying. He's trying hard. I really believe that. But if he doesn't get there, it would be unfortunate.
He says, why don't you get the votes for it?
Well, I can probably do that. But I have a couple of people that I won't do so well with. You understand why, right? They're no longer in power as soon as they leave on January 20th.
Should he put it up for a vote either way?
Yeah, I would, because I'd like to see the people that want to vote against it.
That to me is the tell, Angela, that last line. Yeah, I would, because I'd like to see that people that want to vote against it. I mean, it's very nice that Republicans don't want Republican infighting. That message doesn't seem to have reached the president.
No, it hasn't. And in a way, this is as much about the SAVE Act as it is about the larger narrative that all Republicans have been pushing, that somehow elections are not to be trusted, that Democrats steal them. And that's really the problem here, is that because they have done so much work to reinforce this narrative, even people that used to oppose it, like Mike Rogers, who did accept election results and was attacking the president in 2020 and is now reinforcing the idea that there's election denialism. What the SAVE Act really is all upside for Trump. Because what he has built is either the machinery that would allow him to manipulate and engage in and disrupt the 2026 midterms. And if they don't get it, he either gets an excuse to do executive action himself or an easy out to say, look at this, if they just would have passed the SAVE Act, then Democrats wouldn't have stolen the election. And that's why they all lost. So for him, it's all political upside. And it gives us a keyhole view as to how things are going to be on the other side of 2026. Not better for Republicans, but it's going to be more internal fighting because he's going to blame them, not himself or his policies, for any losses that they suffer.
I want to illustrate the point that Angelo just made about Mike Rogers. This is what he wrote the day before the Capitol insurrection. The headline from his Washington Post op-ed, "The election was free and fair." He wrote, Trump and his allies questioned those results, quote, without proof, only conspiracy and hearsay. Fast forward a few years later, Rogers suggested he lost his last Senate race because of an unfounded claim about a van of ballots. And he praises Trump for spouting voter fraud conspiracies from the White House. Do any of them believe it? Does it make it easier for them, Claire? Do you think now that they're like, well, maybe I didn't win because there was voter fraud in my election? Like, is it self-healing for them to spread this lie?
I don't know. I think Mike Rogers goes in that category of, what happened to him. I mean, he and Marco Rubio need to hang out.
There's not enough room in that category, Claire.
I know. It's like they're going to have a big bus as opposed to a minivan. It is really discouraging because Mike Rogers knows better, but he has decided that power is more important than principle. And he is trying to get power by becoming a United States senator. So he's perfectly willing to abandon his integrity, frankly. And this is what Michigan voters really need to think about, is his integrity. Because do you really want to continue to go down a path where someone is so manipulative by the thought of having more power? I mean, his fundamental stuff has shifted, just like Marco Rubio's has. So it is very hard. And once again, they can't explain why Republicans won in those same elections. I mean, if there's some grand conspiracy, they're really, really bad at it because Trump won presidency twice and many, many Republicans won to the extent they control the government. If these elections are so full of fraud, why are they in charge?
So let that question sit for a second. Michael, I want to go to why you were in South Carolina and what it is that you were watching there, because as soon as Darlene Graham, Lindsey Graham's sister, entered the Senate, she said the Save America Act is a, quote, top priority. Does she still see that position as key to winning this nomination?
Yeah, she does, Alicia. In fact, she's touted the fact that very early on in her Senate career, she signed on as a co-sponsor of the Save America Act. And I was with her at a campaign stop earlier this morning at a restaurant during a meet and greet with voters. And Darlene Graham made it very clear she substands with President Trump on a multitude of issues, including prioritizing passing the Save America Act, transgender matters, standing behind him on a strategy with the Iran war, immigration, you name it. And of course, this is because her closeness and endorsement from President Trump is one of her key selling points points as she tries to win the full 6-year term. Now, whether or not that'll be an effective campaign strategy, that's going to be up to voters tomorrow when they head to the polls. But there's another interesting dynamic emerging right now. As Graham is touting her closest to President Trump, she's slowly moving away, very in a small way, from her brother, the late Senator Lindsey Graham. Last week, she said that while Lindsey Graham was a supporter of the filibuster, she would back nuking the filibuster to pass the Save America Act. And then this morning, when I had asked her, is there any other ways that you differ from Lindsey Graham, she said, while he focused on national security and foreign policy, I'm going to be focused on issues more important to South Carolinians here. Take a listen to what she had to say.
I'm more about the affordability because I know how it feels to have to work paycheck to paycheck.
So you would say that South Carolinians are going to have a senator, still named Senator Graham, but somebody coming in a different mold and perhaps working differently.
Right. I want to focus on health care, affordability, the things that really matter to the people in South Carolina. Again, not that national security is not important, but again, you got to go to the food line behind you and buy groceries every day to support your family, right?
And Alicia, it's a small difference, but you have to remember voters are still learning who exactly Darlene Graham is and what she stands for. She's, of course, very new to the political scene right now. So we're starting to get a sense of what kind of full-time senator she will be. The last thing I'll leave you with, voting is tomorrow, but the expectation is this will head to a runoff. If that happens, the top two vote finishers will face off against each other on August 25th. So possible that this election could last a few more weeks as South Carolina Republicans decide who to put on the ballot for the full 6-year term.